the man who couldn't be killed. The grenade lands at Sergeant First Class Robert Howard's feet. He doesn't have time to react. The explosion lifts him off the ground. Shrapnel tears through his hands. His M16 is blown to pieces. The world goes white, then black. When Howard opens his eyes, he can't see clearly. Blood runs into them. His hands are burned and mangled. He can't stand. His legs won't work. Around him, the jungle is alive with gunfire, screaming, the sound of North Vietnamese voices shouting orders, the smell of burning flesh. Through the haze, Howard sees something that makes his blood run cold. His platoon leader, Lieutenant James Gerson, is lying exposed in the open, wounded, helpless, and the enemy is coming for him with a flamethrower. Howard can't walk. He has no weapon. His hands are destroyed. Any reasonable man would stay down and hope to survive. Robert Howard has never been reasonable. He starts crawling. This is the story of the only soldier in American history to be nominated for the Medal of Honor 3 times in 13 months, and the story of why he only received it once. Robert Lewis Howard was born on July 11, 1939, in Opelika, Alabama. His father, Charles, was a paratrooper in the 101st Airborne Division during World War II. So were 4 of his uncles. 3 of those uncles never came home. Young Bob Howard grew up hearing the stories, the jumps, the battles, the brotherhood of men who wore jump wings and maroon berets. He knew from childhood what he wanted to be. In 1956, at 17 years old, Howard enlisted in the United States Army. He wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. He wanted to be a paratrooper. The Army sent him to jump school, then to the 82nd Airborne Division, then to Ranger training. Howard absorbed everything: tactics, weapons, survival. He was building something, a foundation for a career that would become legendary. In 1965, the Army sent Howard to South Vietnam with the 101st Airborne Division, his father's old unit, his first combat deployment. He spent a year in the jungle, learning the terrain, learning the enemy, learning what it took to survive in a war where the front lines didn't exist and death could come from any direction. In 1967, Howard volunteered for something different, something secret, something that would take him places the American public didn't know their soldiers were going. Military Assistance Command, Vietnam Studies and Observations Group, MACV-SOG. The name was deliberately vague, bureaucratic, forgettable. That was the point. SOG ran covert operations across Southeast Asia, into Laos, into Cambodia, into North Vietnam itself. Small teams of American Special Forces soldiers and indigenous fighters inserted deep behind enemy lines to gather intelligence, rescue prisoners, and hunt enemy commanders. The missions were classified. The casualties were classified. The locations were classified. When SOG soldiers died, their families were told they died in South Vietnam, even if they'd actually died in Cambodia or Laos. Howard thrived in SOG. He was promoted to Staff Sergeant, then Sergeant First Class. He led teams into denied territory where getting compromised meant death or capture. No one was coming to save you. You saved yourself or you died. Over the next year, Howard would prove he was very good at saving himself and everyone around him. November 16, 1967, southeastern Laos. Sergeant First Class Howard is leading a covert SOG platoon-sized mission through dense jungle when the world explodes around them. A North Vietnamese machine gun opens up. His team is pinned down. Men are screaming. The fire is too accurate, too devastating. Someone has to silence that gun or they're all dead. Howard spots the source, a camouflage position 30 yards away. He doesn't wait for orders. He doesn't ask for volunteers. He charges, alone, running through a hail of bullets, firing his rifle as he moves. The North Vietnamese gunners swing their weapon toward him. Howard hits the position before they can adjust their fire. He kills every man in the gun nest. Behind him, his team starts moving again. Then a second machine gun opens up from a different position. The team goes down again. Howard can see his men being chewed apart by the incoming fire. He crawls forward, gets close enough to throw a grenade. The explosion silences the gun temporarily, but seconds later, the North Vietnamese are manning it again. Howard grabs a light anti-tank weapon, stands in the open, fires. The position explodes. His team is extracted successfully. No one is left behind. Howard's commander immediately recommends him for the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for valor, for single-handedly eliminating 2 machine gun positions and saving his entire team. The recommendation goes up the chain of command, then comes back down. The award is downgraded to the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest award for valor. Why? Because Howard was in Laos. Officially, American forces weren't operating in Laos. The mission was classified. Awarding Howard the Medal of Honor would require publicly acknowledging where he'd been, what he'd done. The Pentagon couldn't do that. Howard doesn't complain. He doesn't protest. He goes back to work. 3 days later, he's inserted into Laos again, November 19th, 1968, almost exactly 1 year after the first mission. Howard is accompanying a SOG Hatchet platoon into Laos. 4 days into the operation, they walk into an ambush. North Vietnamese troops attack from multiple directions. Then something emerges from the jungle that makes Howard's blood run cold. A Soviet-built PT-76 tank. The turret swings toward the American position. Howard grabs an anti-tank rocket, braves intense fire, creeps forward until he has a clear shot, fires. The tank explodes. The North Vietnamese regroup. They send in more troops. The fight rages for hours. Then Howard hears the sound every soldier dreads. A helicopter going down. A medevac chopper has been hit. It crashes 300 yards away. Howard is already wounded, bleeding from his arms, legs, back, and face. Multiple shrapnel wounds. Any reasonable man would stay in cover and wait for extraction. Howard charges through 300 yards of enemy fire. Alone, he reaches the crashed helicopter, pulls the pilots out, gets the wounded door gunner to safety, drags all 3 men back to friendly lines through withering North Vietnamese fire. He refuses to be evacuated. He stays with his team until the mission is complete. His commander again recommends him for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation again goes up the chain, again comes back down, downgraded to the Distinguished Service Cross. The reason? Same as before. The action occurred in Laos. Classified location. Can't publicly acknowledge it. Howard has now been recommended for the Medal of Honor twice. Received the Distinguished Service Cross twice instead. He's one of the most decorated soldiers in Vietnam, and most Americans have never heard his name. 6 weeks later, he's going back into enemy territory again. December 30th, 1968, northeastern Cambodia. A SOG reconnaissance team has gone missing. Private First Class Robert Sheridan and his team haven't reported in. Command fears the worst. Captured or killed. SOG launches a bright light rescue mission. 40 men, Americans and Vietnamese fighters. Sergeant First Class Howard is the platoon sergeant, second in command. They insert by helicopter into the team's last known location. The moment the helicopter's skids touch down, all hell breaks loose. The landing zone is a killing ground. The North Vietnamese have been waiting. An estimated 2-company force, between 250 and 300 enemy soldiers surrounding the landing zone. Howard takes 3 men to secure the perimeter. Machine gun fire erupts from multiple positions. Howard feels the ground beneath him shift. A landmine. The explosion throws him through the air. He wakes up seconds later. His hands are mangled, burned. His rifle is destroyed. He can't stand. Something is wrong with his legs. His vision is blurred. Through the haze, he sees the 3 men who were with him, all dead, cut down in the initial burst of fire. Around the landing zone, his platoon is in chaos. Men are screaming, running. Some aren't firing their weapons. They're paralyzed by the overwhelming enemy fire. Then Howard sees Lieutenant Jerson. The platoon leader is lying in the open, wounded, exposed, and the North Vietnamese are moving toward him with a flamethrower. Howard's hands don't work. He has no weapon. He can't stand. He starts crawling toward Jerson. Through a hail of gunfire, bullets snap past his head, kick up dirt in his face. He keeps crawling. He reaches Jerson and starts dragging him back toward cover, applying first aid with hands that barely function, trying to remove the lieutenant's equipment. Then a North Vietnamese soldier fires. The bullet hits one of the ammunition pouches on Jerson's belt. Several magazines detonate. The explosion lifts both men off the ground. More wounds, more burns. Howard momentarily takes cover, catches his breath, realizes his platoon platoon is disintegrating. Men are dying because they're panicking. Someone has to take charge. He starts dragging Jerson again, pulling the wounded officer back toward friendly lines. An unhurt soldier sees him and hands him a .45 pistol, the only weapon Howard can still hold. North Vietnamese soldiers burst out of the jungle, running straight at him. Howard fires the .45, drops 2 enemy soldiers, takes a grenade from a nearby American, and throws it, kills more. He finally gets Jerson to the casualty collection point. Other wounded men are there. The able-bodied soldiers are scattered, confused, terrified. Howard makes a decision. He crawls from position to position, organizing a defense, directing fire, administering first aid to the wounded, giving ammunition to those who need it, encouraging the defenders, rallying men who were ready to give up. He can't walk. He's bleeding from multiple wounds. His hands are destroyed. He has a pistol and whatever weapons he can scavenge from the dead. For 3.5 hours, Howard holds his platoon together, calling in airstrikes, coordinating fire support, keeping his men fighting when everything in them wants to run or surrender. The North Vietnamese make repeated attempts to overrun the position. Each time Howard directs fire that drives them back. F-4 Phantom jets scream overhead, dropping ordnance danger close. So close Howard can feel the concussions shake the ground beneath him. Finally, after 3.5 hours, the enemy fire slackens enough for rescue helicopters to land. Howard supervises the loading of every wounded man. He counts heads, makes sure no one is left behind. He's the last man to board the helicopter. Of the 40 men who went into that landing zone, 6 walk out alive. The recommendation for the Medal of Honor is submitted immediately. This time there's a difference. The mission was in Cambodia, still classified, still a denied area. But December 30, 1968, was different from November 1967. The political situation had changed. The Pentagon was more willing to acknowledge covert operations. The recommendation goes up the chain. This time, it stays. On March 2, 1971, President Richard Nixon presented Sergeant First Class Robert Howard with the Medal of Honor in the White House. Howard stood in front of the president, pale and nervous. Nixon asked if he was okay. "Sir," Howard said, "I don't know if I'm going to faint or not, but I apologize for my looks. I think my heart stopped beating." Nixon smiled and placed the medal around Howard's neck. Howard became the only soldier in American history to be nominated for the Medal of Honor 3 times in 13 months. 2 were downgraded to the Distinguished Service Cross because the actions occurred in classified locations. The 3rd finally earned him the nation's highest honor. But the story wasn't over. Howard stayed in Vietnam. He deployed 5 times total, 58 months of combat, more than 4.5 years in the jungle. He was wounded 14 times, received 8 Purple Hearts. The other 6 wounds weren't severe enough to take him out of action, so he never reported them. He earned the Distinguished Service Cross twice, the Silver Star, 4 Bronze Stars, 8 Purple Hearts, the Medal of Honor, dozens of other decorations. He became one of the most decorated soldiers in American military history. Some sources call him the most decorated soldier of the modern era. In December 1969, after his 4th tour in Vietnam, Howard received a direct commission from Master Sergeant to First Lieutenant. He became an officer without attending officer candidate school, a rare honor reserved for exceptional soldiers. He deployed to Vietnam a 5th time as an officer. In February 1971, he was finally pulled out of combat to receive the Medal of Honor. Howard continued serving after the war. He earned a bachelor's degree from Texas Christian University in 1973. He earned 2 master's degrees from Central Michigan University in the early 1980s. He rose through the ranks, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, colonel. In September 1992, after 36 years of service, Colonel Robert Howard retired from the United States Army. He went to work for the Department of Veterans Affairs. He spent 14 more years serving veterans, helping them navigate the system, fighting for their benefits, making sure the men he'd served with got the care they deserved. Between 2007 2007 and 2009, Howard served as the national president of the Congressional Medal of Honor Society. He made trips to Iraq to visit troops, to shake their hands, to tell them their service mattered, that someone remembered, that the nation appreciated what they were doing. On December 23, 2009, Robert Howard died at a hospital in Waco, Texas. Pancreatic cancer. He was 70 years old. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery on February 22, 2010, Section 7A, among 14 other Medal of Honor recipients. The Heroes section. The story of Robert Howard is not about one day in combat. It's about a career spent in the most dangerous places doing the most dangerous missions. SOG lost more men percentage-wise than any other American unit in Vietnam. The missions were classified. The casualties were classified. When a SOG soldier died, the Pentagon often couldn't even tell his family where he'd really been or what he'd really been doing. Howard ran those missions for 58 months, through Laos, through Cambodia, through North Vietnam, places American soldiers weren't supposed to be, doing things the American government couldn't acknowledge. He was nominated for the Medal of Honor 3 times, 3 separate actions, 3 different displays of heroism that individually would have earned any soldier the nation's highest honor. He received it once, not because the other actions weren't worthy, but because the Pentagon couldn't publicly acknowledge where those actions occurred. That's the cost of classified operations. Howard performed incredible acts of valor that had to be downgraded because admitting what he did would reveal where he'd been. On December 30, 1968, Howard crawled through enemy fire with mangled hands and destroyed legs to save his wounded platoon leader. He organized a defense when his platoon was disintegrating. He held off 2 companies of North Vietnamese soldiers for 3.5 hours while wounded multiple times. 6 men survived because Howard refused to quit, refused to leave anyone behind, refused to accept that the situation was hopeless. That's what the Medal of Honor recognized. But Howard had done equivalent things twice before. In Laos, in classified operations that couldn't be publicly acknowledged. 3 nominations, 2 downgrades, 1 Medal of Honor, 8 Purple Hearts, 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, a Silver Star, 4 Bronze Stars, 58 months in combat, 14 wounds, 5 tours in Vietnam. The most decorated soldier of the Vietnam War, possibly the most decorated soldier in modern American history. When reporters asked Howard about his service, about the wounds, about the fear, he always gave the same answer: I was just doing my job. That's where I could do the most good. No false modesty, no self-aggrandizement, just a simple statement of fact. His job was to go into enemy territory and bring his men home. He did that job for 58 months. He did it better than anyone else. The men who served with Howard speak of him in reverent tones. SOG veterans, men who themselves performed incredible acts of courage, describe Howard as something beyond human. Major John Plaster, who served with Howard in SOG, wrote about him in his book SOG, The Secret Wars of America's Commandos in Vietnam. He called Howard the most highly decorated American soldier in history. He performed magnificently, Plaster wrote, single-handedly knocking out a tank, wiping out anti-aircraft gun crews, rescuing downed helicopter crews, repeatedly wounded, bleeding from his arms, legs, back and face, but refusing to be evacuated. That wasn't one mission. That was a typical Bob Howard mission. World War II had Alvin York and Audie Murphy. National heroes whose stories were told in books and movies. Had Vietnam not been so unpopular, Robert Howard would be equally famous. His exploits read like fiction, but every word is true. The difference is that York and Murphy fought on European battlefields, where reporters could document their actions. Howard fought in places the American government couldn't acknowledge. His heroism happened in the shadows, but the men he saved knew. The pilots who flew him into denied territory knew. The commanders who sent him on mission after mission knew. Robert Howard was the man you sent when the mission was impossible, and failure meant death. He succeeded for 58 months. He brought his men home. He earned 3 Medal of Honor nominations in 13 months. He became a legend among legends. On February 22, 2010, 14 Medal of Honor recipients stood as honor guard at Howard's funeral. Fellow recipients, men who understood what it took to earn that medal, what it cost. They knew Howard's story. They knew about the 3 nominations. They knew about the 58 months in combat. They knew about the 14 wounds and the 5 tours and the classified missions in Laos and Cambodia. They knew Howard was one of them, more than one of them, a warrior who exemplified everything the Medal of Honor represented. Arlington National Cemetery, Section 7A, among the heroes. That's where Robert Howard rests, the paratrooper from Alabama, who followed his father's footsteps into the 101st Airborne, who volunteered for the most dangerous missions in the most dangerous war, who was nominated for the Medal of Honor 3 times in 13 months, who crawled through enemy fire with mangled hands to save his lieutenant, who organized a defense when his platoon was disintegrating, who held off 2 companies of enemy soldiers for 3.5 hours while wounded multiple times, who refused to quit, refused to leave anyone behind, refused to accept that any mission was impossible. The only soldier in American history nominated for the Medal of Honor 3 times. The most decorated soldier of the Vietnam War. The man who couldn't be killed. That's Colonel Robert Lewis Howard, SOG warrior, Green Beret, the soldier who always did what needed to be done, no matter the cost. I was just doing my job. That's where I could do the most good. 58 months in hell, 14 wounds, 3 Medal of Honor nominations, 6 men brought home alive on December 30th, 1968. That's the legacy of a man who defined duty, honor, and sacrifice. The man who couldn't be killed until pancreatic cancer finally did what 250 North Vietnamese soldiers couldn't. But even then, Robert Howard won. He lived 60 more years after that day in the jungle. He served 36 years in the army. He worked 14 more years for the VA. He shook hands with troops in Iraq decades after his own war ended. He raised a family. He earned degrees. He led the Congressional Medal of Honor Society. He lived a full life doing what he always did, taking care of his people, making sure they got what they needed, being where he could do the most good. That's Robert Howard, 3-time Medal of Honor nominee, 1-time recipient, legend, the man who couldn't be killed